You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You probably already know this, because you have felt it. At a party where everyone was talking and none of it meant anything to you. In a conversation that stayed on the surface no matter how long it lasted. In a relationship that looked perfectly fine from the outside and felt completely hollow from the inside. In a group chat that never stops buzzing and somehow makes you feel more invisible than silence would. This is the version of loneliness that nobody talks about. Not the loneliness of physical isolation, not the loneliness of someone who has no one around them, the loneliness of disconnection in the middle of connection, of being surrounded and still unseen, of being heard but never really understood. And it is far more common, far more damaging, and far less acknowledged than the version people are willing to admit to. Most people who experience this version of loneliness do not even call it that. They call it being tired, they call it being introverted, they call it just needing some space. Because admitting loneliness feels like admitting failure, like admitting that something is wrong with you specifically. But it is not wrong with you. It is wrong with the environment most people are living inside. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Loneliness researcher Vivek Murthy, former Surgeon General of the United States, called loneliness one of the most significant public health crises of our time. Not because people are living alone, not because people lack social contacts, but because people are living without genuine connection, without the kind of interaction that actually registers as meaningful to the human nervous system. And the health effects of this are not metaphorical. They are measurable, documented, serious, chronic loneliness, the kind that persists across social situations, the kind that follows you into rooms full of people, activates the same neurological pathways as physical pain. It elevates cortisol over time, which damages the immune system, disrupts sleep architecture, accelerates cognitive decline, and increases all-cause mortality by roughly 26%. That last number deserves to sit for a moment. 26% higher risk of dying from any cause. From chronic loneliness, not from isolation in a physical sense, from the persistent absence of genuine connection. Loneliness is not a feeling to manage with better coping strategies. It is a biological signal, as urgent as hunger or thirst, telling you that something essential is missing. And ignoring it does not make it quieter. It makes it louder. It makes it more expensive. It makes it harder to function, harder to think, harder to feel motivated, and harder to sustain the kind of effort that meaningful work and meaningful life require. Here is why this epidemic is getting worse instead of better. We are more connected than any generation in history in terms of quantity, and less connected than almost any generation in history in terms of depth. The average person today has more social contacts, more communication platforms, more ways to reach people, and more exposure to other people's lives than anyone who came before them. And loneliness rates have been rising consistently and significantly for decades. Because connection is not the same as communication. Seeing someone's curated highlight reel on social media is not the same as knowing how they are actually doing. Sending a voice message is not the same as sitting with someone in the same room. Being physically present is not the same as being emotionally present in the same space. What the brain requires for genuine connection is very specific. It requires vulnerability. It requires being known, not just seen. It requires conversations where something real is at stake, where you say something true about who you are, and the other person receives it without judgment. It requires the experience of mattering to someone, not their follower count, not their content feed, you specifically. Most of the social interaction available in modern life does not include any of these things, and the brain knows the difference. Even when you tell yourself you are fine, even when you stay busy enough that you do not have to sit with the feeling, even when you fill every quiet moment with content so the silence never gets loud enough to say what it needs to say, the body keeps the score, and it keeps it accurately. Now here is how loneliness is specifically making you weaker. Not weaker in a poetic sense, in measurable, concrete, neurological ways. First, cognitive performance. Research consistently shows that chronic social disconnection impairs executive function. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, planning, regulating impulses, and thinking clearly under pressure, functions measurably less effectively in people experiencing sustained disconnection. You are not imagining the fog. You are not thinking as clearly, as creatively, or as strategically as you would be if genuine connection were present in your life. The sharpness that you are trying to build through discipline and habits and routines is being eroded by something you may not have thought to address. Second, emotional regulation. Humans co-regulate emotionally. This is not a metaphor. It is a documented neurobiological process. We need the regulated nervous systems of people we trust to help stabilize our own. A calm, safe, genuine interaction with someone who knows you literally changes your physiological state. It lowers cortisol. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It restores the baseline that stress has pushed out of range. Without that, the emotional response system becomes hypervigilant. Small stressors start to feel larger than they are. Recovery from setbacks takes significantly longer. The emotional baseline slowly but steadily drifts toward anxiety, reactivity, and depletion. Third, motivation and purpose. This is the one most relevant to anyone who is trying to build something. Purpose is relational. Almost all of the most durable human motivation is connected in some way to other people. Doing this for someone. Doing this because it matters to the people I care about. Doing this to be seen and respected by people whose opinion I actually value. Doing this because I am part of something that extends beyond just me. Chronic loneliness quietly removes most of this fuel, and without it, motivation becomes fragile. Sustainable only in short bursts. Impossible to maintain across the months and years that meaningful work actually requires. So what do you actually do about this? 3 shifts, not 10, not a complete social overhaul. 3 specific shifts that the research consistently identifies as most effective. First, choose depth over frequency. You do not need more social interactions. You need deeper ones. One conversation where you say something true about your life, something you would not normally say, something that actually costs you a little to admit, is worth more than 20 conversations that stay safely on the surface. This does not require finding new people. It requires being more honest with the people who are already there. Most relationships stay shallow, not because the depth is unavailable, but because both people are waiting for the other one to go first. Go first, 1 degree deeper than your current default. That is the entire instruction. Second, initiate more than you wait. One of the most consistent findings in loneliness research is this. Lonely people tend to wait for others to initiate, and so do the other people. And so, both sides wait. Neither side reaches out. The connection that both people would have valued never happens. Not because either person did not want it, because neither person moved first. Be the one who moves first. Send the message, make the call, suggest the plan. Not because it always feels natural, because someone has to. And choosing to be that person is a decision about who you are, not just what you do. Third, protect time for in-person connection. Not calls, not messages, not reactions and replies, in person. The research on what type of social contact most effectively addresses loneliness and its health consequences is remarkably clear. Face-to-face, unscheduled, genuinely present time with people you actually care about. Even 1 hour per week of this produces measurable reductions in loneliness and its associated physical and cognitive effects. 1 hour. Most people reading this have 1 hour available. They are simply spending it on something that feels like connection, but doesn't register as connection to the nervous system. Here's the bottom line. You cannot build the focused, motivated, resilient version of yourself that you are working toward while running on the chronic deficit that genuine disconnection creates. Connection is not a reward for when you have your life together. It's not a distraction from the work. It's infrastructure. The same way sleep is infrastructure. The same way food is infrastructure. Without it, everything else costs more and produces less. And if your connection infrastructure needs rebuilding, do not wait for the loneliness to become undeniable before you begin. Because by the time it becomes undeniable, it has already been expensive for longer than you know. Reach out to someone today, not to talk about anything important, not with any agenda, just to show up, just to say, I was thinking about you, just to be the person who moved first. That is where it starts, always, and I am rooting for you, even from afar.